Hi, I'm Yuri Lowenthal, the voice of Ben Tennyson.
This is Paul Lighting, the voice of Max Tennyson.
Hi, I'm Tara Strong, the voice of Ben Tennyson.
Greg Sipes, the voice of Kevin Levin. And right now, that's how we do it. And this is Wingman G, the real-life Beast Boy. And you're watching the Ink Tank, babies.
Thanks for tuning into the Ink Tank.
Thanks for tuning in to the Ink Tank.
I loved working on Ben 10, and I wish they would do a Ben 10 animated feature film.
We had a great time working on that show. We were a family, even the aliens.
I love being Ben, because I get to turn into whatever alien I want, at least most of the time.
Don't touch my car. Enjoy the video, yo.
We hope you enjoy the video.
Hope you enjoyed the video. It's hero time.
Going hero. Bye, guys.
This is Max. Out.
An unquantifiably long amount of time ago, there was a blank dimension without a universe in it. The fifth-dimensional cosmic traveling beings known as the Quantumalia arrive at this dimension and continue their never-ending expedition of creating universes through this device known as the Annihilargenesis Emiagost, or the Annihilarg for short. Briefly before the universe was about to be created, the time-traveling would-be dictator Maltruant arrives. With him, his own Annihilarg, programmed to create a universe in his image, with himself as the supreme ruler. Before the evil Annihilarg can go off, shape-shifting hero beyond time known as Ben Tennyson arrives with his partner Rook, and using the power of all of his transformations, contains the Big Bang and defeats Maltruant, scattering his body into pieces across the universe, destined to repeat his failure over and over again, trapped in a time loop. Gazing upon the faces of God, Ben and Rook admire the beauty of creation. From there, the Universe Prime is born.
This video is the completed, illustrated retelling of the entire history of Ben 10, from the classic series all the way to Omniverse. The information will be presented chronologically, so you will see all flashback and time travel shenanigans play out in the order they would have happened in the natural progression of the universe. By the end, you should be well versed in the legacy that is the hero of heroes. I'd love to hear reactions from both longtime fans and new beginners of the show, and see if they can follow along. Now, let's begin. Released into the universe are these single-celled ancestors to all DNA, known as slimebiots. These sentient genetomorphic species gather, carry, mix, and deposit DNA across the growing universe for eons to come. They are essentially the creators of most known sentient life today. Sometime after the universe had time to grow, a swampy, small planet gives birth to a genius that will become the smartest being in many galaxies. Azmuth, a Galvan who at full height is only about 6 inches tall, soon begins to flourish his passions to invent and learn alongside his mate, Zenith. His first grandiose invention being an entire artificial planet known as Primus. Obsessed with his own capability, Azmuth sought out to find a way to tap into the fundamental forces of the universe and control the laws of physics himself. Inspired by a solitary alignment, Azmuth forged the Sword of Ascalon, a sword that wields such great power, one can't help but compare it to magic. This pushed Zenith away, with a young Azmuth too ignorant to care. However, the sword was stolen by a fierce incursion warrior, hoping to put an end to their constant world wars. This eventually led to the destruction of the incursion planet. Azmuth blamed himself. After retrieving the sword, Azmuth was still longing to prove the sword's creation was valid. Eventually, Azmuth visited a, quote, pathetic backwater planet he came across on his studies. Earth, circa 1131, the medieval era. Georgius, a Roman soldier cursed with immortality, is defending his land from a cross-dimensional shape-shifting being known as the Dagon, enslaver of 100 different dimensions, and his army of demon Lucubras. To relinquish the assault, Azmuth offers the knight his sword if Sir George, the Roman soldier's current name, was worthy enough to wield it. Sir George indulges on Azmuth's offer and engages in an epic battle, ending with George cutting out the heart of the Dagon
and leaving Ascalon buried within. As the Dagon's heart was the source of his power, George was then able to magically seal the Dagon away, freeing humanity from his reign. Sir George then founded the Forever Knights, vowing to protect Earth from extraterrestrial threats and prepare for the Dagon's potential second coming. Azmuth sought out to right his wrongs by inventing something to represent peace instead of war, hoping that one day, his lost lover would notice. Eventually, Azmuth became antisocial and put himself in isolation on Xenon, and began developing the Omnitrix, which can transform the user into a multitude of alien species. Azmuth would continue to perfect his invention over time. In the 1770s, George Washington is leading a secret organized branch of hunters dedicated to learning about and protecting the world from supernatural threats and rumors. A stranded Maltruant arrives here and receives aid from a young, banished traveler named Vilgax. Vilgax helps Maltruant repair his ship, and in return, Maltruant gives young Vilgax a Chronosapien time bomb. The two are soon intercepted by Ben and Rook time-hopping once again, and fight off young Vilgax and Maltruant with the help of George Washington. Seeing Ben transform from species to species inspired Vilgax's lifelong lust for this unique kind of power, as Ben unknowingly became the catalyst for his greatest foe. Washington cuts the anchor of Vilgax's ship, inspiring the tale of George Washington cutting down the cherry tree. This also marks the first recorded alien sighting on Earth, and Washington's organization starts to integrate extraterrestrial matters. This sets up the creation of the Plumbers, meant to fix leaks in normal society. They create a headquarters hidden behind the faces of Mount Rushmore, a nod to their original members, the Founding Fathers. In 1952, an unnamed scientist working in a secret base of operations just outside of Bellwood is completing his work on a machine that uses quartz crystal to break a hole in the space-time continuum. The machine erupts, and both the scientist and his assistant disappear, thought to be dead. In 1962, 10 years later, Air Force pilot turned astronaut Maxwell Tennyson saves the life of an energy being named Verdona from an android that aspired to use her as a power source. The two eventually start a family together. Also present was an alien police officer named Magister Labrid, who invites Max to join the force. This stems the integration of the intergalactic merger of said police force and the Earth Plumbers. Plumbers are now multi-galaxy wide and operate as the definitive law enforcement for all galaxies under their jurisdiction. Max would go on to work with many partners through his years on the force. On one of his missions, an Osmosian named Devin Levin gave his life for Max, entrusting him to keep an eye on his son. We come to know this son's name as Kevin Levin, who was born with the power to absorb any kind of energy, matter, or DNA into himself and replicate it. Of course, it would take a very long time for Kevin to control his abilities, and after accidentally destroying his family's home, he runs away to the city of New York. A few years pass, and Azmuth has finally finished the prototype version of his Omnitrix, and tasked one of Max's old love interests, Xylene, to transport the Omnitrix to the greatest plumber on record, Max Tennyson, for safekeeping. However, rumors of the Omnitrix's existence has spread through the universe. Now a fierce warlord with a reputation, Vilgax catches wind of these rumors, igniting his hunger to taste this power he once witnessed hundreds of years ago, and sets a course to intercept Xylene's mission and capture the Omnitrix for himself. A fight for the Omnitrix between Xylene and Vilgax's ship causes an explosion. This concludes with Vilgax suffering life-threatening injuries, imprisoning him on his own ship until he can properly heal. Xylene injects the Omnitrix into a pod locked onto Max's DNA, but she herself falls into the Arctic, freezing her into a deep sleep for the time being. Back in Bellwood, Max Tennyson, now retired and living in a motorhome, decides to take his grandchildren on a cross-country trip to help bring them closer together. A 10-year-old Ben Tennyson, accompanied by his cousin Gwen, begin their road trip with Max at a campsite in Yosemite Park, California. Through a series of events we later learn were manipulated by greater forces, Ben finds himself crossing paths with a mysterious meteor that fell from the sky. The Omnitrix quickly attaches itself to Ben's wrist, igniting the legend of Ben 10, kid superhero that can change into 10 different alien forms. Max has yet to reveal to his grandchildren his alien hunting past, but uses his knowledge of alien life and combat training to help Ben master his powers. The trio spend the summer going from state to state, stepping in to help out battle evildoers and save the day when they can. During a trip to New York, the gang eventually run into Kevin, who uses his abilities to absorb the DNA of Ben's aliens for him to use for his own selfish, psychopathic gain. A discharge from the Omnitrix sends Kevin into hiding, where he experiments more with the alien DNA he now has merged into his body. As their adventures continue, Ben starts to have visions of a mysterious onlooker, someone who has been spying on him and testing him by sending bounty hunters and alien drones. Vilgax's healing time has come to an end, and now with a much more powerful cybernetic body, Vilgax heads straight to Earth to claim the Omnitrix as his own. Vilgax successfully captures Ben, taunting him with his plans of creating an army of Omnitrix warriors. Max reveals his history as a plumber to Gwen, and the two head to Mount Rushmore to gather more weapons to save Ben. Meanwhile, a power surge on Vilgax's ship begins to shift Ben between his alien forms. A final assault between Ben, Gwen, and Max against Vilgax leaves him trapped on his exploding ship. Max agrees to open up to the kids about his secret life, and the three become stronger and closer together. As their summer adventures continue, the trio expand their capabilities. Max comes out of retirement and begins to re-familiarize himself with his old technology and weapons. Gwen takes an interest in magic after stealing a spellbook from one of their many reoccurring villains. And Ben soon discovered that there are more than 10 aliens in the Omnitrix, and becomes a natural at many fighting styles. Vilgax eventually emerges under a partnership with Kevin, who has now permanently damaged his body with the alien DNA from Ben's Omnitrix. Ben temporarily gains access to the master control of his Omnitrix. Max seals them both away in the Null Void, an alternate dimension made to inhabit the galaxy's worst criminals. On Max's 60th birthday, Ben and Gwen are thrusted 20 years into the future by Gwendolyn, an adult version of Gwen, now a master of martial arts and magic. During this brief journey, Ben evaluates the arrogant and selfish behavior he develops as he matures into adulthood, and vows to make different choices as he grows. Ben and Gwen are returned to their time shortly after defeating future Vilgax. Xylene also arrives after she is accidentally unfrozen by a group of Inuits. She reveals to them that the Omnitrix was intended for Max, not Ben, but deems him worthy enough to keep it. At some point, Ben is yet again hurled into the future, this time only 6 years, during a chrono-randomization barrier error by 16-year-old Ben Tennyson. Ben then helps his future self and team defeat Ultimate Agrigor. More on that later. After this event, Ben is sent back to his own time and recalls this journey as a vague dream. Towards the end of the summer, the Omnitrix's self-destruction is accidentally turned on during a battle with one of Ben's reoccurring enemies, Dr. Animo. Ben is taken to space by Tetrax, an ex-bounty hunter turned vigilante, to help Ben find the creator of the Omnitrix and turn off the self-destruct, as the destruction's power will destroy the entire universe. Vilgax escapes the Null Void and trails them, intending to steal the Omnitrix once and for all, or force the creator to build him a new one. The gang finally meet Azmuth, who at first refuses to fix the Omnitrix as he believes the universe is doomed to destroy itself anyway. In a last effort to save the universe, Ben battles Vilgax and his army one final time without use of the Omnitrix. This inspires Azmuth to put his faith in Ben as the future hope of the universe, and fixes the Omnitrix, unlocking one of Ben's most powerful forms in the process. Azmuth keeps an eye on Ben from that point forward, but for now, still refuses to give him the master control. Meanwhile, back on Earth, the Highbreed begin seeding their plans for universal domination by planting sleeper agents and slowly integrating themselves into society. With summer vacation over, Ben and Gwen return to school. The disorientated dad of Azmuth soon visits and declares war on Ben after misinformation leads him to believe that Ben has killed Azmuth, and a Toku Star battle in the middle of Bellwood City causes miles of detrimental property damage. The city secretly enlists the help of various aliens to help rebuild Bellwood, with the aliens taking up camp below the surface. Over time, these camps would form a city of their own. A year passes, and Ben unlocks a new transformation named Feedback and quickly becomes addicted to using him. Meanwhile, in the Null Void, Kevin finds himself in a plumber-operated prison and meets Quarrel, a wise inmate with knowledge on Osmosians. He helps Kevin learn to control his rage, which was the trigger of his initial mutation. The more energy an Osmosian absorbs, the more insane they become. To combat this, Kevin learns to absorb matter instead, creating a suit of armor with whatever material he touches. Quarrel helps Kevin escape by sacrificing his life at the hand of the prison warden, who has a deep hatred for criminals. This memory haunts him through his early teens. Still trapped in the Null Void, Kevin is found and recruited by Proctor Cervantes, leader of the Rooters, a special Black Ops division of the Plumbers. Cervantes was a corrupted scientist who frequently abducted children and performed experiments on them, attempting to create an army of superpowered beings that can assassinate a target known as the oncoming storm. When he discovered Kevin, he thought of him as the key to achieving his dream. and uses Kevin's powers to experiment on himself and a new team of children, creating the Rooters. After a period of training, the Rooters are sent to Earth to execute Ben Tennyson, with the assault led by Kevin. During the battle, the assault fails, which highly upsets Proctor Cervantes, calling the Rooters project a failure. He wipes Kevin's mind of any memory of him, and does the same to the other Rooters, and lets them loose once again into the Null Void. With his new friend by his side, Kevin and Argent wander the Null Void. They eventually find a way out, and after a few scandals as traveling con artist partners, agree to go their separate ways. On Galvan Prime, Azmuth has moved back to his homeworld and becomes their first thinker. During the creation of the Galvanic Mechamorph, a species of sentient blobs of nanites that can possess and enhance machinery that live on Galvan Prime's moon, named Galvan B, one Mechamorph was made incomplete, which corrupted both his biomass and his sanity. His name was Malware. Azmuth worked to develop a cure to stabilize him, but it was deemed a failure. Malware became hostile and attempted to cure himself by kidnapping Albedo, one of the assistants of Azmuth, forcing him to develop a cure. This only mutated and corrupted Malware further. Malware then planned to absorb the Omnitrix and use its power to perfect his form. He steals an incomplete blueprint from an altercation with Ben, and begins working on an Omnitrix duplicate with a scientist known as Dr. Psychobos. The two realize that they are in need of DNA samples to program into their Omnitrix, and enlist the services of Kyber the Huntsman to collect samples from the predators of Ben's aliens. Malware then ambushes the Tennysons, and in an effort to crush Ben's spirit, rips feedback out of Ben's Omnitrix and vaporizes him, destroying Ben's ability to transform into him. Malware, Dr. Psychobos, and Kyber then spend the next 5 years collecting DNA samples for what they will eventually call the Nemetrix. Heartbroken by the loss of feedback, Ben eventually has the Omnitrix removed. 4 years later, Ben is now 15 years old and continues living a normal life, playing sports and drinking smoothies. With Grandpa Max missing, Ben re-equips the watch, and with the help of Gwen and Magister Labrid, the high-ranking plumber that originally recruited Max, they begin their search. However, as a catch, the Omnitrix has recalibrated after Ben's 4-year hero hiatus and has locked away his original transformations, while giving him 10 new ones. The three run into Kevin Levin, now 16 and back on Earth, during a weapons deal with the Forever Knights. The DNA aliens, slaves that work for the Highbreed, are also present, and after a short escapade, Magister Labrid dies in battle, leaving Ben to carry on Max's legacy. Double-crossed from his weapons deal and honored by Labrid's sacrifice, Kevin offers his help in defeating the Highbreed and their DNA aliens. Recalling Ben's so-called dream of a future where he and Kevin were friends, Ben agrees, and the iconic Alien Force trio is formed. Using his new abilities, the trio begin recruiting superpowered allies for an upcoming invasion. Some were good, some were bad, and some were quite questionable. The three eventually find that Max is still alive and has been deep undercover investigating the Highbreed fleet, only to seemingly die yet again by using an unstable Null Void projector as a grenade to kill a Highbreed general and give Ben and his team another fighting chance. To honor Max's sacrifice, Ben continues his journey to put together a valuable team. As the Highbreed invasion gets closer, many revelations are made. Gwen finds out that her powers come from her alien grandmother, and has been using magic to channel her abilities. The gang meet Professor Paradox, a man thought dead due to a failed time travel experiment that has accidentally launched him outside of reality, where he learned to bend time and space and find his way back. And most importantly, Ben had unlocked his most powerful transformation yet, Alien X, a nigh-omnipotent being that can bend reality with a mere thought. Although this power comes with complications to overcome. Later, after a distress call from the Null Void by one of the allies Ben has made, he discovers that Max has yet again escaped the clutches of death, and the Null Void grenade ended up transporting him to this dimension, where he has began an uprising against the dictator persona of Dr. Animo known as the Void. Ben assists the revolution, but Max refuses to leave, as he believes there is still work left for him to do there, but promises to return one day. Now an independent leader, not by burden, but by choice, Ben prepares for war. The war officially begins with the fall of Galvan Prime, the homeworld of Azmuth. He and Paradox then set things into motion. Ben calls in every favor he has at the time for a final assault on the Highbreed, as their plans to extinguish all life they deem impure, which is any race that is not their own, is in full effect. Azmuth at first refuses for Ben to participate in the war, as the Omnitrix is too valuable to risk losing, but after realizing that nothing will stop Ben from fighting, he grants Ben access to the Master Control, the full powers of the Omnitrix that he had only experienced once before. Ben fights his way to the Highbreed Control Tower, only to find that the true Highbreed Supreme Council is located on their home planet. Max triumphantly returns with his own team to give Ben the fighting chance to make it to the Supreme Council. There, it is revealed that the Highbreed race is actually dying, and they intend to wipe out the galaxy along with them. On a whim, Ben uses the Omnitrix's genetic damage repair function, amplified by the Highbreed galactic jump gates, to rejuvenate the Highbreed's entire toxic bloodline, recombinating their DNA and giving them a second chance at life. With the war ended, and Ben Tennyson now recognized as a galactic hero, the Highbreed return home. Max continues training the Max Force, his new team of recruits, while Azmuth says his goodbye to Ben, who has yet again lost access to the Master Control. Ben's new heroic status starts to cloud his judgment and fuels his ego. Months later, Vilgax arrives on Earth with his follower, Siphon. Vilgax issues a Conqueror's Challenge, a law galactically enforced that allows the opposer to challenge that planet's greatest hero, with the champion obtaining ownership of the planet upon victory. Vilgax has done this to 10 other worlds, including his own home planet, which has now been renamed Vilgaxia, redeeming his status as a banished criminal to a respected leader and warrior. With his 10 victories, Vilgax now wields many new powers and weapons. To ensure victory, Kevin and Ben attempt to hack the Omnitrix after Azmuth refuses to help Ben after the Highbreed War gave Ben a much more arrogant personality. The experiment goes awry, breaking the Omnitrix, releasing some of Ben's aliens into the world, and permanently mutating Kevin for a second time. The trio work together to recapture Ben's missing aliens, but the Omnitrix remains broken. The challenge begins, and Ben appears to be a perfect match for Vilgax's new powers, until Vilgax gets the upper hand and kills Ben in his chromostone transformation. Suddenly, Ben's broken pieces begin to reform into another transformation, Diamond Head, one of his original 10, and promptly defeats Vilgax. As time goes on, the trouble weighs on the trio due to his mutation, as no one is able to figure out how to cure him. Unable to escape his defeat, Vilgax continues to pursue the trio, eventually teaming up with Azmuth's ex-assistant, Albedo. After a failed attempt to recreate the Omnitrix after he was deemed unworthy, Albedo was accidentally genetically altered, now resembling a warped Ben Tennyson. The two agreed to an alliance to retrieve the Omnitrix from Ben. Albedo would use the Omnitrix to cure himself, and Vilgax to rule the galaxy. Albedo eventually stole an Omnitrix core from Azmuth to complete the Ultimatrix, a device that can turn Albedo into Ben's aliens, and then evolve them into their ultimate form. The two capture Gwen and Kevin and threaten execution unless Ben hands over the Omnitrix. Ben complies, and Vilgax uses the Omnitrix to power his bioid army, finally achieving his dream of commanding an army of Omnitrix users. Vilgax double-crosses Albedo and keeps the Omnitrix for himself. As Vilgax begins his reign over the galaxy, Ben activates the self-destruct on his Omnitrix via voice command, telling Vilgax that the Omnitrix will destroy itself if he does not give it back to Ben. Vilgax believes Ben is bluffing and lets the Omnitrix explode, destroying it for good. Ben swipes the Ultimatrix from Albedo to once again gain the power to transform into his aliens, but now has the option to go ultimate. During the battle, Vilgax's ship plummets into the ocean, where Vilgax unleashes his true form, only to be defeated by Ben using Ultimate Swamp Fire. The destruction of the Omnitrix also cures Kevin, as the frequency from their original experiment is what kept Kevin in his mutated state. Armed with new abilities, the trio's journey continues. On Osmos 5, home planet of the Osmosian race, a tyrant named Agrigor sets out to absorb the powers of 5 special alien species, which would give him the power to survive the treacherous journey to collect all 4 parts of the Map of Infinity. Agrigor captures the aliens and makes his way back to Osmos 5, where he will absorb their powers through a special machine. The alien prisoners revolt and crash land on Earth, each going their separate ways. Off the coast of the ocean, Vilgax washes up and is found by bystanders. Too weak from his previous battle, he cannot return to his normal form and can barely move. He is unable to resist being sold to a traveling carnival as a sideshow until he is discovered by a member of the Flamekeeper Circle, run by a man named Conduit Edwards. The Flamekeeper Circle is a religious charity organization at face value, but in secret, worship an ancient being known as the Dagon. They believe that humanity was jump-started by aliens, and that the Dagon would one day return to Earth for a second coming of enlightenment. And it just so happens that Vilgax bears a passing resemblance to him. Members of the Circle are known as the Esoterica, and as worshippers of the Dagon, have the ability to phase in and out of dimensions, and expel powerful demonic energy. Vilgax, accepting his false identity as the Dagon, is cared for and nursed back to health by the Circle. Life seems to have fallen into repetition for the trio, until Ben discovers that his secret identity was leaked online, bringing him a lot of unwanted attention in the media and his personal life. The trio track down the leak to a low-class childhood blogger named Jimmy Jones, who deduced Ben's secret himself. He tips them off about an alien stealing pieces of a nuclear bomb in Florida for them to investigate. Kevin unleashes their new ship, the Rust Bucket 3, and sets a course. They come across the first of the 5 Andromeda aliens that they agree to rescue and help return to their home worlds. In the end, Agrigor always had the upper hand and recaptured the aliens for himself, completing his mutation as Ultimate Agrigor. The following battle leaves Max with a damaged nervous system, stranding him on Galvin Mark II while he heals. Paradox claims that he was the one who hid all 4 pieces of the map of infinity, as a race between Ultimate Agrigor and the trio begins. Despite their efforts, Ultimate Agrigor proves to be very smart and very powerful, and builds the map of infinity, which grants him access to the Forge of Creation, where celestial sapiens, such as Alien X, are born. Paradox brings them to the Forge's entrance, where Ben accidentally entangles himself with a chrono-randomization barrier, pulling his 10-year-old self out of the timeline for a team-up of generations. The two Bens, Gwen and Kevin, battle Ultimate Agrigor on the palms of a giant celestial sapien mother. Agrigor plans to absorb its child and obtain omnipotence, as infinite celestial sapiens do not have the same drawbacks as their adult selves. Just as he is about to succeed, Kevin sacrifices his sanity and absorbs the powers of Ben's Ultimatrix, creating Ultimate Kevin, and defeats Agrigor by absorbing his powers too. The overwhelming power immediately drives Kevin mad, and the trio is temporarily broken. Paradox takes young Ben back to his own timeline, allowing him to recall these events as a dream, so Ben can faintly remember a future where they were once best friends. Kevin's involuntary betrayal drives a wedge between Ben and Gwen. Gwen continues to support the idea that Kevin has changed, and they should save him no matter what. Ben disagrees, saying Kevin is obviously too far gone, and they should kill him before anyone else gets harmed by him. Meanwhile, Ultimate Kevin hungers for power and attacks many of his old friends and enemies alike, including the Max Force and the Warden that killed his childhood friend who helped him escape. With the help of sometimes enemy Darkstar and Cooper Daniels, a technopath, Ben and Gwen each take their own shot at dealing with Kevin. Gwen tries to get Kevin to see reason, which fails. Ben engages Kevin in battle, as both nearly die at different points. Darkstar and Cooper finalize a device that can cure Kevin, powered by the remains of the Dominus Librium, an ancient energy-conducting artifact believed to be of alien origin. With Kevin cured, the trio reunited, and Max finally healed from his injuries, all seems well in the world. This is until the Forever Knights, continuing their ancient tradition of finding and exploiting alien technology, come across an old seal bearing their symbol that they believe to be a weapons vault. They crack open the vault, but it is too strong to break open entirely, and lets loose a creature that starts wreaking havoc on Bellwood. This gains the attention of the trio, who work with the Knights to track down the creature. When found, the creature leeches onto Gwen, embedding itself into her mind, temporarily controlling her. The trio free her, leaving Gwen with new memories, revealing the creature to actually be a demon that feeds off of prayers called a Lacubra, a servant of a great being named the Dagon. What they broke was actually a seal that was keeping the beast away, and now he is slowly breaking free again. The broken seal also alerts an old man from the senior center known simply as George, who begins to make his way to the seal. Confirming it is broken, his quest to slay the Dagon begins once more. He goes to Area 51 and teleports the entire base onto the side of a mountain and uses it as a place to perform his operations. Meanwhile, the trio is confronted by Paradox and Ultimate Ben, another version of Ben's future. Ben realizes that every time he meets his future self, his future will change, but for now, this future comes with the power to access his transformations while in human form. They arrive to help put an end to Eon, an evil time walker who has been traveling across the multiverse, killing different Ben Tennysons, although they later find that this is not the case, as he is in fact recruiting them for his own personal reasons. The trio, Ultimate Ben and Paradox, defeat Eon by destroying their universe's version of the Hands of Armageddon, which is said to exist simultaneously in every possible universe. Ultimate Ben returns to the future after giving Ben's Ultimatrix new transformations, and Paradox warns Ben to beware a man named Old George. At this time, Old George hails a meeting at Area 51 with the leaders of each faction of the Forever Knights, who have all had their own run-ins with Ben over the years, and proclaims that the Knights must carry out their true order, exterminating all aliens on the planet. He upgrades the Knights with advanced armor and weaponry, with special vehicles to complement. The Purge, as it is officially titled, is kicked off with the death of Pierce Wheels, one of Max's students, prompting the trio to step in. Ben puts an end to the Purge, but later finds that the entire event was a distraction, as George's real quest was to re-obtain the Sword of Ascalon, which is currently still piercing the Dagon's heart in his invisible, teleporting fortress. George was able to calculate where the fortress would appear next, and using his notes, Gwen and the gang follow closely behind. At the fortress, George and the trio are both met by Vilgax, who were brought by the Flamekeeper Circle. Still thinking Vilgax is Dagon, they aim to reunite Dagon with his heart so he may regain his full power and save humanity. As a battle between the Esoterica and the Forever Knights ensues, Vilgax grabs hold of Ascalon and is rejuvenated back to his land form, now powered by the sword. He then hears the voice of the real Dagon, telling him he is aware of his shenanigans, but will actually grant him ultimate power if he becomes his servant, and go back to the seal and finish breaking it to set Dagon free. Vilgax agrees and heads towards the seal, with the trio and Old George chasing him. At the seal, Vilgax fails to fully break it, and is instead sucked into the cracks, leaving Ascalon behind. Old George reunites with Ascalon, and is restored to his youthful strength. Old George says the Dagon is his mission, and the trio agree to back off for now, and see if Old George can handle it on his own. A few weeks later, the trio investigate the Flamekeeper Circle's hideout, but find no one there. They find that they have rallied around the seal with an army of Esoterica to help free Dagon once and for all. The Forever Knights, led by Sir George, stand against the Esoterica, as hundreds upon hundreds of knights in Esoterica break into an all-out war. Conduit Edwards kills Sir George's squire, so Sir George kills Conduit Edwards, with Edwards still proclaiming his loyalty to the Great Dagon with his last dying breath. Ben soon finds and joins George in battle, where they are confronted by Vilgax, who has now been granted demonic power from Dagon to destroy the seal. They fight against Vilgax's new form, but appear evenly matched. As the seal cracks even more, Dagon's power is released unto Earth, turning every living being on the planet into Esoterica, aside from George and the trio, who were protected by Gwen. However, the seal still isn't fully broken. Unsatisfied with Vilgax as his servant, Dagon reconnects with Gwen through a bug he implanted in her during the Lucubra incident, and forces her to break the seal. Gwen succeeds, and Dagon frees himself into the universe. Dagon towers over them in a godlike prestige, and does battle with the trio and Sir George as the last defense against humanity. The Dagon turns George into dust, ultimately defeating him. As all hope seems lost, it is actually Vilgax, who was planning for this the whole time, who defeats Dagon by absorbing his power into himself, the same way he stole power from the other 10 worlds he conquered. Against a Dagon-powered Vilgax, Ben wields the Sword of Ascalon himself, and fulfills George's destiny by putting an end to Dagon's power, forever. Ben absorbs the Dagon's power into the sword, and armed with the Ultimatrix, Vilgax proclaims Ben as a god and urges him to use his power to reshape the universe any way he wishes. Tempted by nigh omnipotence, Ben refuses the power, and returns the sword to Azmuth. Azmuth is impressed by Ben's growth since becoming more arrogant after the Highbreed Invasion, and deems Ben worthy of the new, completed Omnitrix. The trio slumps back into the usual hero time charade, until Gwen reveals that she is accepting a scholarship to go to college early, and Kevin is leaving with her, breaking up the Alien Force team. Max sends a freshly graduated Plumber Academy student, Rook Blanco, to be Ben's new partner, and the two slowly begin working out their differences, fighting crime in the underground city known as Undertown, formed from the alien camps that helped rebuild Bellwood back in 2007. they come across a drifting spaceship rumored to be owned by the Conqueror, the creators of the universe. And on board is their Annihilarg, which can both create and destroy universes. In a ragtag fight for the Annihilarg against other foes, the device is accidentally activated, eradicating everyone and everything in the universe except for Ben, who protects himself as Alien X. Finally starting to master his power, Ben uses Alien X to create a new universe to replace his old one, although it is not an exact duplicate, and so far, no one aside from Ben believes this actually happened. After 5 years, Malware finally continues his pursuit against Azmuth. Kyber is sent to hunt down and capture Ben with his beast, now armed with the DNA of predators of Ben's respective aliens through the completed Nemetrix. Combating species who were naturally born to fight Ben's aliens against a skilled huntsman strengthened the bond between Ben and Rook, becoming true partners. But even with their teamwork, Malware has successfully upgraded himself enough to launch an attack on Galvan Mark II. They begin by destroying their moon, Galvan B, disabling all of the mechamorphs present. Malware then continues to evolve himself using Galvan Mark II's resources and transforms into a giant. Ben struggles to defeat Giant Malware and gets absorbed into him, and has an existential realization with his younger self. This revelation restores Ben's old transformation feedback into his new Omnitrix, and becomes the catalyst that puts an end to Malware once and for all. The adventures of Rook and Ben continue as they save the planet from the incursion invasion, prevent Albedo from permanently stealing the brain of Azmuth, and liberate the Anur system from the evil clutches of Lord Transil. Paradox returns once more with a warning that the entire multiverse is at stake, as Eon and Vilgax have teamed up and have been time traveling together for years, putting together an army of evil Ben Tennysons for a war. The battle will take place in an alternate universe, where one of the Bens never found the Omnitrix, because the Omnitrix never even existed here. That universe is then targeted by the evil Bens, only for Ben Prime to swoop in and save him. Ben and Paradox fight alongside Ben 23, Gwen 10, and Ben 10K,
another version of Ben's future that has the power to fuse his transformations together
to protect No Watch Ben from Vilgax and Eon's army. The battle's true purpose was a distraction, allowing Vilgax to activate his Chronosapien time bomb and erase every single universe and timeline from existence. All except for No Watch Ben, who Ben Prime bequeaths his Omnitrix to seconds before being erased himself. Paradox takes this Ben on a journey to restore the timeline, revealing that it was those two that manipulated the events of Ben Prime's timeline for Ben Prime to receive the Omnitrix in the first place. No Watch Ben also helps Paradox collect the good Bens for battle, but is left behind when the war starts again. No Watch Ben re-enters his universe shortly after the time bomb went off, but now has a better understanding of the Omnitrix and the responsibilities of a hero. Using clockwork, he reverses the effects of the time bomb and restores the multiverse.
No Watch Ben returns the Omnitrix to Ben Prime, and the good Bens effortlessly defeat Vilgax together.
Back in Ben Prime's dimension, Ben is put on trial by the Celestial Sapiens for illegally recreating his universe as Alien X, which violates the Multiversal Preservation Act. The court eventually rules Ben guilty, but by using the Tetraman Trial of Combat, agrees to fight another Celestial Sapien for his own freedom. It is during this battle that Ben finally gains full control of Alien X and defeats the Galactic Gladiator, clearing his name. With the entire universe now aware of what Ben has done, Cervantes finally returns after realizing that the dangerous threat known as Ben Tennyson has put the Omnitrix back on. He restores Kevin's childhood memories of being the Rooters' main assassin, prompting Kevin to do the same to everyone else who had lost their memories. A charade of events lead to Ben, Gwen, Argit, Rook, Kevin, Alan, Helen, and Manny, all in the Rooters' headquarters located in the Null Void. Cervantes physically takes control of the Amalgam Kids, but is unable to do so to Kevin, who he instead corrupts by taunting him about Ben ruining his childhood and imprisoning him. Kevin seemingly turns on the team and joins Cervantes. A fight breaks out between them, leaving Kevin permanently scarred on his chin.
Kevin surprises everyone by revealing that ever since his last mutated incident, he has gained control over his powers and was faking insanity the entire time to get close to Cervantes,
to destroy his connection to the other Amalgam Kids, leading to his defeat, demotion, and strands him in the Null Void. The Time War is now set into motion as enemies from the future, Subdora and Exoskull, are tasked with collecting all the pieces of Maltruant scattered across the multiverse to become whole again. Lots of time-traveling events lead to Ben and Rook teaming up with Ben's future son, Kenny, and Skurd, a slime biot that found his way onto Ben's Omnitrix and can form special weapons and tools based on Omnitrix DNA. Their goal is to prevent Maltruant from succeeding, but this journey follows Ben all the way to adulthood. Now 36 years old, Ben is fighting to stop Maltruant from building his own corrupted Annihilarg, and travel back to the beginning of time to remake his universe in his image. As a gift from Paradox and Ben 10K, Ben and Rook use special time cycles to follow Maltruant into a literal race against time. They temporarily knock Maltruant outside of the time vortex, stranding him on Earth in the 1770s. Maltruant sends out a distress signal and is greeted by young Vilgax, who agrees to repair Maltruant's carriage in exchange for the Chronosapien time bomb. Ben and Rook arrive to battle them with George Washington. Vilgax is inspired to dedicate his life to obtaining the Omnitrix, and Maltruant makes his escape back into the vortex. They arrive at the beginning of time to find themselves face to face with a Contumalia ship, and are met by the three multiversal gods before them, who take the shape of your heart's desire so you can physically perceive their fifth-dimensional forms. Maltruant arrives not long after, and activates his evil Annihilarg. Skurd forms the Celestial Blade to cut through the Contumalia's chamber, but Ben has no choice but to dive in after the Annihilarg as a last-ditch effort to save the universe.
Hope prevails, and using the power of all of his transformations, Ben contains the Big Bang and fires it into Maltruant, scattering his body into pieces for Ben and Paradox to hide across the multiverse, with Maltruant destined to repeat his failure over and over again, trapped in an endless time loop. Ben says his goodbyes to Skurd, who wishes to join his ancestors in the development of life. The Contumalia are impressed by their observations, and invite Ben and Rook to stay and witness the true birth of their own reality. The Annihilarg is placed into the chamber and sent into the endless void. From there, the Universe Prime is born.
But the story doesn't have to end there. This entire video was made to guide you through Ben Prime's legacy as a testament to my passionate belief that Ben 10 has many more stories to tell, and I invite you to check out my own rendition of the series called 5 Years Later. 5YL is a crossover continuation of Ben 10, written and illustrated by myself, with additional artwork, design, and story input from fellow Inktank members O.R. Ash and Hershey. Like Ben 10, it's gone through its own share of changes over the years, but many fans have agreed that our work was able to help bring back the magic of the original franchise, and I hope that our work can do for you what these shows have done for us. Thanks for watching. You can stay up to date with everything going on my social medias and join the Discord to talk to other passionate fans. You can also get weekly updates on 5 Years Later on Patreon for only $1 a month. And don't forget to check out our second channel where we've been streaming 5 times a week. And as always, keep it fizzy.